tried to sit at the XO's desk, but quickly gave that up for the visitor's chair. Even that felt like an invasion. I didn't belong there in his space. McNamara needed to work with the analysts, and I knew that she'd call for me when she had anything, but I needed to do something. I'd never been good at sitting still. I tried to work through the nuclear attack in my mind, figure out who was likely to have been behind it. One of the two nations made the most sense, at least on the surface, but the more I thought about it, the more skeptical I got. The Tsar God were the most likely culprits, since the attack had taken place in Argaz. They were a patriarchal monarchy where rulership had stayed in one family for more than 2 centuries. Wealth was focused mainly within a few families, those who had begun the lithium mining companies, though a lot of that money had trickled down to other citizens, to the point where immigrants did a lot of the actual work now. The problem was that an attack like this didn't fit their nature. The Tsar God weren't really fighters. The war 50 years ago had proved as much. But it was more than that. It was beneath them. They saw themselves as too cultured to debase themselves with that sort of thing, or at least they seemed to. The Argazi seemed less likely to be responsible, since the attack happened on their soil, but maybe they had used that as an alibi. They were nominally a collective, but realistically, it was something else. On the surface, they were the opposite of the Tsar God, completely opposing the amassing of wealth by individuals and outlawing family inheritance. In theory. Yet there were still those in power and those who weren't, and that didn't seem to change. They had elections, but there was only one party and candidates usually ran unopposed. A lot of the power ran through the mining collective, and while everybody was, by definition, equal, those involved with that particular enterprise were more equal than others. But they were also ridiculously bureaucratic. For them to agree to something as rash as a nuclear attack, well, I just didn't see it. I lasted 17 minutes, turning thoughts over in my own mind, before I couldn't take it any longer and headed back to the pit. "Battle stations!" McNamara yelled when I came through the door. The 2 or 3 soldiers who weren't already in their chairs glued to their screens scrambled to their seats. "Space, report," she said once I approached. Space's voice came over the speaker before I reached my seat in the command row. "Still no contact with any satellites. That includes the entire quantum communication network. We've lost all off-planet communications and primary GPS systems, as well as all space-based observation systems." I put on my headset so I could hear without the clutter of the room that came with listening to the speaker. "What happened? Did we just lose the link?" "Still working on it, ma'am," she answered. "We can't be sure." "How soon?" I asked. "Estimate that we'll know more in 90 minutes, 2 hours at the outside." I tapped my fist against the desk. "What's your best guess?" The net stayed silent for several seconds before she answered. "If I had to guess right now, I'd say the satellites are gone." "Gone? As in destroyed?" "Yes, ma'am, but like I said, we can't confirm." I shook my head. "Who could have... How?" "We don't know, ma'am," said Space. "Roger," I answered after a few seconds. There were too many things we didn't know. I squirmed in my chair, unable to get comfortable. "Cyber, report," said McNamara. "The attack against our network is contained, ma'am. It was kind of primitive, not much of a threat." Primitive? That sounded more like the Tsar God. "Can you trace it?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Do it," I said.